ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to everyone to our Saturday morning session. Today we will cover the verses 11 to 18 of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. We At the end of our last session, we discussed briefly about Sankhya Siddhant and the philosophy of Sankhya. Now, verses 11 onwards, the spiritual dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna starts. And this is the crux of the entire spirituality. Some people say that Bhagavad Gita is a mix, or you can say a gist of all the Upanishads put together. And that gist starts from here. In real sense, every chapter and every verse of Bhagavad Gita is extremely important. But the chapter 2, verses 11 onwards, are some of the most fundamental issues which have been addressed. So here Lord Krishna actually starts with the highest point in any philosophy which is possible. Or we can say the deepest science starts here. Now, first we will take verse number 16 and then we will come to 11, because verse number 16 is the foundation of all the verses from 11 to 18, and in fact further downwards as well. So we will take the first part of verse number 16. Nastu vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate satah. It's a very simple verse. It looks very innocuous. It says कि असत वस्तु का तो कोई अस्तित्व नहीं है, it does not exist, and सत्य सत वस्तु का अभाव नहीं है. This is very innocuous verse, but this is a foundation which lays down the entire spiritual thinking, which starts from verse number 11 onwards. Now we must understand this very clearly. असत वस्तु का अस्तित्व नहीं है और सत का अभाव नहीं है. Now, one thing which we should understand, that the thing in the modern science, it is very clear that you cannot create any matter, you cannot destroy any matter. Even the smallest particle of matter cannot be destroyed. You can transform it. Similarly, even the smallest particle of matter cannot be created. That is impossible. So whatever exists, exists. Whatever doesn't exist, doesn't exist. So the modern science also says that you cannot destroy whatever is existing. You cannot create something new which does not exist. So this is one foundation here. And this is what Lord Krishna says 5,000 years back, कि असत वस्तु का अस्तित्व नहीं है. The thing which does not exist does not exist. The thing which exists, it exists. That is what basically it means. So what is the thing which exists and what is the thing which does not exist? Now, if anything which exists today and then it is destroyed and does not exist tomorrow, it means the thing was not inherently in existence. हिंदी में अगर कहें तो जैसे कोई चीज कल थी, आज है और कल नहीं रहेगी. कल थी, आज है और कल नहीं रहेगी. सिर्फ बीच में उसका अस्तित्व है, न अस्तित्व पहले था न उसका अस्तित्व बाद में है. सिर्फ बीच में उसका अस्तित्व है. ऐसी वस्तु जो है वो असत वस्तु है. It is called borrowed existence. अगर कोई सत वस्तु होगी तो वो पहले भी थी, आज भी है और भविष्य में भी रहेगी। उसको आप, उसके एग्जिस्टेंस को आप खत्म नहीं कर सकते। सो दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. Let me take an example, a few examples to illustrate it properly. Let's take an example of a hot potato. Now you put the potato in water, the water is boiling, the potato becomes hot. Now you take the potato out, it's hot. But the heat is not the property of potato. You keep it outside for a while and it will again become cold. The heat is a borrowed property which came from hot water. Similarly, the hot water doesn't have the property of heat. The actually heat came from the fire. Now, fire has an inherent property of heat. There will be no fire without heat. So, there's an inherent property of heat which exists in the fire. But that property of heat does not exist in water or in potato. That is a borrowed property which stays for a while, then disappears. So this is how the borrowed property means. That is one example, that you borrow a property, it gives you an existence for a while and then again it disappears. Then the second method of understanding it is that there is a vikar, there is a sort of, modification which comes into play. Vikar आता है. जैसे you have a space. Now you modify the space to make a house, to make an apartment, to make a godown, to make a toilet, to make a theater, to make a cricket field. Now that is the modification of the space. The space inherently is space. That is the one which provides you the space. But the cricket ground doesn't provide you space. It's only a modification of the space for a short while. Then you can remodify it, make into a big apartment building. The apartment building is again a existence which is borrowed in between. You modified the space and you created certain new name and form. So that is the second kind of variety in which you create certain modifications in an existing inherent property, and then you create a new structure with a new name, new form. That is again a borrowed kind of situation. And once you demolish that apartment building, it will again convert into the space. If the toilet is demolished, it's back to the space. The house is demolished, it's back to the space. जो पोर्ट में जो स्पेस है, जो पोर्ट जैसे ही खत्म होता है, टूट जाता है, it mixes back to the space. So the name and form comes into play because of this modification. संस्कृत में इसको विकार कहते हैं. You create a vikar, the name and form are different, and that gives an impression of an independent existence which is not there. Let's take another example to understand it. You have a piece of wood. From that wood, you can create a lectern, you can create a door, you can create a window, or you can, create something else, a desk, table. Now, that modification of the wood is there. It's only a modified version of the wood which gives that existence. If you take the wood out of the table, there's no table. If you take the wood out of the lectern, there's no lectern. If you take the wood out of the door, there's no door. The wood is the essential element of all these modified names and forms. So the names and forms come into existence because of modification. The same analogy applies to the gold ornaments. You take the gold ornaments, you have a bracelet or you have a ring. You take the gold out of the ring, where is the ring? There's no ring existing. You take the gold out of bracelet, there's no bracelet. So basically, this is what we call vikar, modification of an inherent property to provide new names and forms. And that gives you an impression that the thing exists independently, which is not true. The inherent quality comes from somewhere else. That borrowed quality gives a different, appears as a different existence for a while, and once that existence is over, it comes back to the original quality. Let's take the third example. This is an example of ocean and waves. You see, each wave, you go and see, we never see the ocean, we only see the waves on the ocean. When we go to seaside, we don't really see the ocean, we only see the waves. The waves are moving, small, big, fast, slow. They go and again collide to the coast, and then again they come back. The movement is constant. But we cannot imagine any wave without water. The water is the essential ingredient of the waves. So the water, with some modification, gives rise to the wave. The name and form changes, but the essential ingredient of the wave is water, or we can call it ocean. So the three examples here we have: the example of hot potato, the example of wood, space, gold, and then the example of ocean. They tell us the fact that certain modifications or certain processes can bring about existence of certain names and forms which exist in the middle. They did not exist in the beginning, and they will not exist afterwards. So that thing which exists in the middle is called asat. It doesn't have its own existence. It's based on the borrowed existence. संस्कृत में इसको कहते हैं मिथ्या. ये मिथ्या एग्जिस्ट कर रही है बीच में. It gives you an appearance of existence. मिथ्या का मतलब ये नहीं कि चीज एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर रही है. मिथ्या का मतलब यह है कि it doesn't have its inherent qualities of its own. Like the fire has its own inherent quality of heat. The hot potato does not have that. That is a borrowed quality. So this is the foundation of this particular verse number 16, कि असत का अस्तित्व नहीं है और सत का अभाव नहीं है. नाउ सत का अभाव नहीं है मतलब in every single wave there is water. There is no wave without water. तो सत उसमें है. Water is there. Everything which is hot, heat is there. Without heat, it cannot be hot. We create a house or a bungalow or an apartment or a godown. Space उसमें होगा. Without space, it will not exist. So that is what is called सत. सत का अभाव नहीं है उसमें. सत एग्जिस्ट कर रहा है हर जगह. उस सत की वजह से असत का अपीयरेंस आपको मिल रहा है. Without the existence of sat, you cannot have the feeling of the appearance of asat. So this is the relationship between these two, sat and asat. And that is why we call Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, because the Jagat is merely an appearance in name and form of the what we call ultimate truth. We call it Brahma, or we call it consciousness, or Atma, whatever name we give, doesn't matter. The ultimate truth appears in names and forms without inherent quality of its own, and that is why it is called Mithya. So this is very important to understand these verses from 11 to 18. So now we'll go to verse number 11. हे अर्जुन, तू न शोक करने के लिए शोक करने योग्यों के लिए शोक करता है और पंडितों के से वचनों को कहता है, परंतु पंडित जन जिनके प्राण चले गए हैं और जिनके प्राण नहीं गए, उन दोनों के लिए ही शोक नहीं करते. Now, this is the beginning where he starts differentiating between the eternal truth and mithya, that is the appeared truth, the truth that appears. Here, Lord Krishna and Arjun are at two different levels. In the next verse, it will become very clear. The verse number 11. क्योंकि आत्मा नित्य है, इसलिए शोक करना अयुक्त है. वास्तव में न तो ऐसा ही था कि मैं किसी काल में नहीं था, अथवा तू किसी काल में नहीं था, अथवा ये राजा लोग जो युद्ध में खड़े हैं ये किसी काल में नहीं थे, या आगे ये नहीं रहेंगे. नाउ हियर ही मेक्स इट वेरी क्लियर दैट द essence of the existence cannot be destroyed. न आप भी पहले थे, अभी भी हैं, बाद में भी रहेंगे. मैं भी पहले था, अभी भी हूं, बाद में भी रहूंगा. But what is changing is the appearance. So there are two different levels. Arjuna is talking in the sansaric language, in the language of the world, जहां हम शरीर से सब चीज को आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, नाम और फॉर्म से आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं. और कृष्णा इज टॉकिंग what is behind the name and form, what is the substance behind name and form. He is talking in those terms. So there are two different levels, and that is why Arjun is not able to understand what Krishna is saying at this stage. When he says कि आप भी नहीं थे, तो he is talking about Arjun. Yes, अर्जुन नहीं था, अर्जुन नाम का व्यक्ति नहीं था, अर्जुन नाम का व्यक्ति नहीं रहेगा, वो भी सच्चाई है. लेकिन जो अर्जुन की जो असेंशियल तत्व है उसके पीछे, वो पहले भी था, आज भी है और बाद में भी रहेगा. तो दिस इज वेयर कृष्णा इज सेइंग कि ऑल दीज पीपल, देयर असेंशियल क्वालिटीज एग्जिस्टेड बिफोर, they are existing now, and they will exist in the future. Therefore, there is no need for you to have any sort of shock, any sort of regret for their disappearance. Now, of course, this will give rise to many questions, so I'll come back to those little later. फिर कुछ लोग, some people may say that you can kill anybody anytime. We'll come to those questions later on. Those are very, very profound questions, but I think we'll explain them at the end of after the 18th verse. So it is very clear from Krishna's version that he is referring to that essential element which is inherent for the appearance, and Arjuna is referring to the appearance. Arjuna is referring to the bodies, and Krishna is referring to the consciousness. That is why two different levels. Now, to explain that further, he is saying that, of course, the appearance and disappearance looks very obvious. But even in this body, even in the body in which we are living, there are so many different phases of that living. So in the next verse he says, किंतु जैसे जीवात्मा की इस देह में कुमार, युवा और वृद्धावस्था होती है, वैसे ही अन्य शरीरों की प्राप्ति होती है. उस विषय में धीर पुरुष मोहित नहीं होता. ये एक this is, now he is explaining it further, that even in our own same body, the body is the same. The body has transformed from childhood to Kumar, that is Yuvavastha, Tarunavastha, then Yuvavastha, then Prodavastha, and then Vridhavastha. The inner existence doesn't change. The outer appearance is changing in the same body. And in the same way, this body will be destroyed and new body will be taken. That is what he explains here, and also in the further verse कि जैसे आप नए कपड़े आप धारण कर लेते हैं. So the essential element in the body does not change. The body changes. When we think about our childhood, How do we know that we can imagine how I was looking at a child? How? Because there is an essential element in myself which was there at that time when I was a child, which is there when I am now in this particular state, and which will be there after 20 years from today. So that element he is referring to. And he's saying that, yeah, this vikar, this change, is happening even within the same body. Don't talk about disappearance. Even within the same body, it is changing. And in fact, this is changing not only in the form of childhood and youth and old age, but it is changing constantly. What I was there yesterday, I am not the same person today. Even as per the science, in some say in 3 years, some say in 7 years, the entire body is reconstituted. All the cells of the body are reconstituted. So he is very clearly saying that don't worry about these changes which are visible to your eyes. These changes are happening even within your own body. And the changeless thing which doesn't change at all, which was existing when you were not existing here, when you were child, when you were young, it is existing now, and it will exist when you are 80 years old or 100 years old, and when you are dying, even then it will exist. So this is what he said, that the suksham existence, that existence which is absolutely invisible, that we must recognize. Now here we must understand uh, what we call three variations of the body: sthul sarira, suksham sarira, and karan sarira. The sthul sarir is the body which is visible, the appearance. The suksham sarira is only the essence. For example, a sense of the five sense organs of perception, the sense of hearing, the sense of sight, sense of touch, because these are only the equipment. This is not the quality. The quality is suksham, that is not visible to us. How do we taste the food? The tongue is there. The tongue is only an instrument, but the sense of taste is absolutely hidden, which is not visible to us, which we cannot understand. So the essence of these five senses of action, five senses of perception, five pranic energies, and four, that is uh, uh, what we call man, buddhi, ahankar, and chit. These 19 elements, a sense of these 19 elements make suksham sarira. And that sarir is visible to each of us in our dream state. That is why the dream state is called Tejas Avastha. Tejas means you are existing in the form of rage, in the form of light. So that existence in the form of light, which is not visible to us, is Suksham Sarira. That Sarir is not destroyed. The Sthul Sarira is destroyed, that Sarir is not destroyed, and it takes another Sthul Sarira in due course of time. So this is what the Vikar comes only in the Sthul Sarir, not in the Suksham Sarir. In the dream state, we do not recognize or we do not realize this vikar, that we are old or I was child or I was in this state. You do not recognize that. You just exist as you are. So the dream state gives you an illustration of Suksham Sarira. And Suksham Sarira consists of the essence of these 19 elements which constitute our body. So this is very important to understand here, that the vikar happens only in sthul sarir, not in the suksham sarir, and this happens because of ignorance. Agyan se bhasta hai ye. This vikar comes into our body because of ignorance. We do not recognize the real self inside us. And because of that reason, we feel that this is, you know, I've become old and I'm, going to die, things like that. That the entire concept of transformation of the body, which we feel throughout our life, is happening because of non recognition of the true element of this body on which this body is subsisting all the time. Without that subsistence, the body will not exist. As we have seen, when a person dies, all his body parts are there, all his body is there, but the person is not there anymore. Because that subsisting element on which the entire body subsides, leaves that body. And therefore, the body starts decaying. So, this is extremely important to understand here, that Sthul Sarir is the one where we feel this, ignore, because of our ignorance, we feel the changing process. In Suksham Sarira, it is not there. And of course, if you go back to the original part, that is the Atma, then of course it is not there at all. So this is where we should say. Now, verse number 14. सर्दी गर्मी और सुख दुख को देने वाले इंद्रिय और विषयों के संयोग तो क्षण भंगुर और अनित्य हैं, इसलिए हे भरतवर्षी अर्जुन, उनको तू सहन सहन कर. Now, in this, there is one word which is extremely important, which we must understand fully. That is matra spars. Matra spars. What is the meaning of matra spars? Matra, basically, we understand normally is quantity. We say कि इसकी मात्रा कितनी है, but it is not exactly the original meaning of matra. Matra is the meaning through which you understand quality and quantity both, but it is more so the instrument of measuring the quality and quantity. Matra is the instrument through which you measure the quality and quantity. And spars means touch, or actually sampark. Spars basically means to come into contact. So, matra is basically the five sense organs of our perception, because through which we evaluate the quality and quantity of outside existence. If there is somebody singing there, how will you evaluate the singing quality and quantity, or whatever, whether it's loud or whether it is not loud, whether it is melodious or it is not melodious, you evaluate through your ears. When the sound comes into contact with your ear, then you get that evaluation. Similarly, if there is a beautiful mountain in front of you, now how do you evaluate that beauty? You evaluate that beauty through your eyes. The mountain comes into contact with your eyes, and the eyes are able to assess the matra, that is the quality and quantity of that particular object. So every single object which is outside in the world is evaluated by our sense organs. The five sense organs help us in evaluating all those objects. And because of that contact with the sense organs, you get into a feeling of dukh and sukh. Whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, whether it is good or it is bad, it is moral, immoral, all these feelings, they arise because of the contact between your sense organs and the outside world. And that is the one which is the real cause of your, what we call, pain and pleasure. How do the pain and pleasure arise? You can, oh, this is a beautiful woman. Now, how do you decide? You decide, you look at a woman and your eyes look at the woman, they come in contact with that image, and they say it is beautiful. The other person comes and say, oh, this is very ugly guy. He decides on that basis. Somebody utters certain words. Oh, he is abusing me. How do you decide that? Because those words come in contact with your sense of hearing, and you evaluate them, give them a what you call classification, or you give them a quality. If they are abusive, or they are praising, or they are neutral. So all this process happens between your sense organs and the outside world. The real self has nothing to do with it. The real self is just, observing. It's just giving the power to the sense organs to evaluate. It's like you take an instrument, like a fan, or like an electric bulb. Now the electricity just provides the power for the fan to run and the bulb to light, or computer to run, or heater to operate, or the cooler to operate. It has nothing to do with the operation itself. It is just providing the power. The operation happens because of the mechanical system there. The mechanical system has been designed in such a way that the operation starts. So similarly, our mechanical system is designed in a way which is based on our Suksham Sarira. And that mechanical system operates in contact with the outside world and gives us the feeling of good and bad, and sukh and dukh, and pain and pleasure, and heat and cold. All those feelings come because of that contact of our senses with the outside world. So this matra spars, this is a very profound word. And if we can understand this, that how do we get dukh and sukh, how do we get happiness and unhappiness, how do we evaluate whether the guy is abusing me or he is praising me, all this is a function of matra spars, the contact between the outside world and your senses, and that gives you the feeling, and the mind processes that situation and gives you that impression. So the entire existence which you see outside, and which you relate to your sukh and dukh, which you relate to your pain and pleasure, is all the function of matra spars, nothing else. And this is what Lord Krishna is saying here, that ये तो विषयों के संयोग से, this is between the contact between the senses and the outside objects, that is the raja, that is causing you all these feelings of good and bad. Nothing else. There's nothing else in it. So this is what we need to understand here. This is the crux in certain ways of the pain and pleasure which we experience in this world constantly. And that pain and pleasure is coming only because of matra spars, nothing else. So Krishna is saying कि इसको सहन कर, इसमें तो कुछ भी नहीं है. You should understand this and you should live with it. And some person has died and some person is existing. This is all matra spars. This is all the feeling of your senses. Nothing is dying and nothing is recreated. This is all the appearances which are happening in the battlefield. You are just feeling those appearances. So you should go to the intrinsic quality where nothing happens. All this is happening outside on the surface, where matra spars, the sense organs in contact with the outside world, is giving you that kind of feeling. So this is the verse number 14 here. Then verse number 15. क्योंकि हे पुरुष श्रेष्ठ, दुख सुख को समान समझने वाले धीर पुरुष को ये इंद्रियों के विषय व्याकुल नहीं कर सकते, और वही मोक्ष के लिए योग्य होता है. Now, once you have realized this process, that all this is happening because of the contact of the sense organs with the objects, then you will realize, I am constant, I am not getting affected with all this. Why should I get affected? Because this is the function of the sense organs and the outside world. Let them do what they want to do. And once you get that feeling, then you stabilize yourself. You are not impacted. you don't feel that dukh and sukh. The body and the outside world keep operating, the sense organs and outside world. So this is a very beautiful explanation how we perceive things and how you become, you know, uh, how you can become absolutely neutral to this whole process of dukh and sukh. And once you become that, you are not affected by the outside objects, then you become eligible for, you know, what we call moksha, or you become eligible for permanently dissolving with the Almighty. The consciousness, the individual consciousness then gets dissolved into the universal consciousness, and you are completely outside the transition of different forms which happen in this world. And that is how this, then he explained the verse number 16 where we started with, that असत वस्तु का तो अस्तित्व नहीं है, सत का अभाव नहीं है. And this is how he has explained, दो जो व्यक्ति इन दोनों चीजों को समझ लेता है, then for him this, this whole world becomes like a play. It becomes like a leela. There's nothing more than leela in this world once you understand these three things. The first thing, that asat which we see is arising because of the sat. The waves are arising because of water, the house is arising because of space, the lectern is because of wood. The essential items are different than they appear. We should understand the essence of each of these things. And if we go back, then we will realize even wood is not the essence. Wood is also made up of something. So that is a backward process which we can continue to go, and then we'll find there's only one element called consciousness from where everything arises. But that's the what you call meditation process, manan process. If you go back and back, you'll find that process. So that is one part of it. Second part is that this transientness, that change is constantly happening in this world. And from childhood to tarun avastha to yuva avastha to prodha avastha to old age to death. This is a constant process. There's nothing unusual about it. And this change is not of the change of the essence, not of the sat. The change is of the asat. And therefore, the change is only of the appearance. You don't have to worry about it. And the third thing here is that everything that you feel is causing you trouble or causing you happiness is because is happening because of matra spars, because of the contact of the outside world with your sense organs, nothing else. So if we understand these three things, I think we already understood the great essence of Bhagavad Gita in certain ways. Sat and Asat, the changing process, change in the process, and why do we feel this? These are the three principal causes which have been explained in the very beginning of these 7 verses 11 to 18. They explain you all this. Now, verse number 17. इस न्याय के अनुसार नाश रहित तो तू उसको जान जिससे ये संपूर्ण जगत व्याप्त है, क्योंकि उस अविनाशी का विनाश करने में कोई समर्थ नहीं. We already understood that nothing can be destroyed. So नाश रहित तो वो होगा which is existing intrinsically. Intrinsic existence is the essential item which cannot be destroyed. The change in the form can be destroyed. You can make different matters, you can make different metals, you can make different bodies, you can make different kind of clothings, you can make different kind of houses. All those changes are possible, but the intrinsic elements, they cannot be destroyed, they cannot be taken out of existence. The thing which is in existence cannot be taken out of existence. The thing which does not exist cannot be brought into existence. This we must understand fully. And this is how this verse which I recite normally, uh, Purnamada Purnamidam, it is also fundamentally based on that. Ki the thing which is absolutely complete, which is lacking nothing, you can add nothing to that. Nothing is to be added. Possible, it's not possible to add anything there. And nothing can be taken out of it, because even if you take out, where will you take it out? Where will you take it? It cannot go outside the poon. The poon is there all the time, and it has to go into the poon. So nothing can be taken out and nothing can be brought in. That is impossible. So uh, the existence of the intrinsic quality is all the time. ये कहें कि उस अविनाशी से तो सारा जगत व्याप्त है. Who is that अविनाशी? That अविनाशी is that intrinsic quality from where all the qualities originate. That screen on which all the films play, whether it is a sport film or whether it is a film of love and uh, fight, or whether it is whatever millions of emotions are played on the same screen, that screen is the one which is avinashi. Without that screen, the sound and light cannot play on its own. For the play of sound and light, you need that screen. That screen is the one which holds everything together and which puts this, what we call the sansar, which is visible to our sense organs in this format. So that everything in this universe originate from that अविनाशी. सब चीजें उससे व्याप्त हैं. कोई चीज ऐसी नहीं जो उससे व्याप्त नहीं है. और जो चीजें आपको अपीयर हो रही हैं, उन सब में वो है, लेकिन वो उस फॉर्म में नहीं है जिस फॉर्म में अपीयर हो रहा है. बिकॉज दैट इज ऑल बोरोड एग्जिस्टेंस, इट्स ऑल मिक्स एंड मैच. It is not that. So this is, if we understand that, then we understand the intrinsic quality of our existence. Then there's nothing more to know about that. Now, in the verse number 18, there's one more important word which I would like to talk about. और इस नाश रहित अप्रमेय नित्य स्वरूप जीवात्मा के ये सब शरीर नाशवान कहे गए हैं. इसलिए भरतवंशी अर्जुन तू युद्ध कर. इसमें अप्रमेय, अप्रमेय इज वेरी फंडामेंटल वर्ड. अप्रमेय मीन्स जिसका कोई मेजरमेंट नहीं कर सकते, जो मात्रा स्पर्श के बाहर है. The thing which the मात्रा स्पर्श cannot help you to evaluate, वो है अप्रमेय. तो अप्रमेय वो तत्व है जो सब जगह व्याप्त है. उसको आप मेजर नहीं कर सकते. उसको आप न उसकी क्वालिटी को जज कर सकते, न उसकी क्वांटिटी को जज कर सकते. अप्रमेय का मतलब दैट इज बियॉन्ड मेजरमेंट. सो दिस इज व्हाट ही इज सेइंग, दैट नाश रहित अप्रमेय नित्य स्वरूप. नाउ दैट एलिमेंट विच इज beyond measurement, beyond our capability to understand, beyond the power of our sense organs, that is all the time existing, and because of that all the world appears, and that appearance is the one which we are able to measure with our sense organs, not the fundamental element. So here he says that you should understand that fundamental element, and once you understand that, then there's nothing to worry about, because all these transformations are happening. People are coming and going, and they are becoming old and they are dying, and newborn babies are coming into place, and all these feelings which you are getting of pain and pleasure, this is all happening because of the contact with the outside world of your senses. The sense are measuring these things, and this measurement, of course, comes from the qualities you inherit from the in the suksham sarira, and that gives you the pain and pleasure according to the measurement you have in your body. So this is all happening outside. You therefore should stabilize in that element which is intrinsic, which is unchanging, which is eternal. And because of that element, all these changes are visible to you. All these changes are happening. Once that element goes, these changes will disappear. Because without that, the changes are not possible. But that element cannot be destroyed because it is in no existence can be destroyed. So that element will always remain and it will keep appearing in different forms. So that is how we should understand this world also, that the world will continue forever. It will continue to appear in different forms because that unchanging element is always there. It cannot be destroyed. It will exist, it existed, and it is existing. And therefore, the world will exist, will continue to exist and existed because that unchanging element keep appearing in different forms and names, and that process will continue, and those forms and name will change. Like the world which I saw when I was a child, it was a different world than the world today. It doesn't mean the world has changed. The unchanging element has transformed further down. The new changes have happened because of that unchanging element. So all those changes are a continuous process. We must realize this play in this world, and once we realize this play, you don't have to worry because this will keep happening. You continue in the path of your duty. Whatever is your duty, you continue. And your duty here is to fight the war because the war what we call dharma yuddh. You are fighting for justice, you are fighting for righteousness, you are fighting for a cause, and therefore you should continue to do that. So this is how we will, complete today's, session. So I think I was clear, but if you have any doubt, please let me know. I'll be very happy to try and clarify those issues. And I had mentioned in the very beginning that don't think that I'm an expert on these issues. There are many, many people who know much better, and some of you may know much better. So please, if you have found anything wrong in my explanation, you have to forgive me for that. But I'll be happy to try and answer all the doubts which you have. Please let me know. Thank you.